Abundant Grace International School, we are located right in Obuasi, precisely BDM. The school has a number of facilities that aid in learning. We have qualified and trained teachers who are ready and willing to assist the children. The school has many facilities such as the ICT laboratory. We also have a science laboratory. We also have a library. The school has a number of buses which convey the children from their various destinations to the school premises. We have the football team, we have the drama group, we have a lot, and the school is based on the Christian principles. For more inquiries, you can call this number 0541 310 901 0541 670772. Abundant Grace, in God we trust.
I am grateful once again to be at your service. My name again is Mr. Samson Anani. I'll be taking you through social studies tutorials for today. And today's lesson is in fulfillment with the promise I made to you earlier on. In my early tutorials, when I was dealing with the 1948 route or disturbances, I had promised you to take you through some of the other political events that took place. I talked about the bond of 1844 that took place on the 6th of March. And I told you that I will be dealing with such topics as and when time permits me. But today I would like to deal with the poll tax ordinance of 1852. You must understand that by 1852, Ghana was under the British rule, or we were under colonialism. Colonialism simply means a situation where a country takes over the administration of another country. And so by 1852, the whole Gold Coast, now Ghana, was under the British rule. The British has formed systems and then policies to control the local people. And when you have a system to run, you must run this system with revenues, or you must run this system with money. But the British government at that time had found it very difficult to raise money locally. And therefore he decided to make a law to tax the people in order to raise revenue, in order to, as it were, to be able to take the daily activities and pay workers. And so that is about the poll tax ordinance of 1852. And so what does it mean? We want to see what we mean when we say a poll tax ordinance. And this poll tax ordinance, as it were, it was simply a law and was made in 1852. And so we are basically saying that the poll tax ordinance is a law that was passed by the British colonial government to raise revenue in Gold Coast at that time. And that the poll tax ordinance was passed or took effect from 1852, and that is why we are referring to the poll tax ordinance of 1852. And that we are saying that the law on the tax ordinance was made such that every citizen in the Gold Coast at that time will pay 1 shilling. That is the currency that was used at that time. And it was compulsory that every citizen of Ghana at that time would pay an amount of 1 shilling every year to the British government in order to raise revenue to be able to undertake some of the activities that they wanted to take. And so simply say that the poll tax ordinance of 1852 was simply a law which was made so that the local people would pay an amount of 1 shilling per year to the British government in order to undertake some of its activities that is needed to be done through the mobilization of revenue. Now, what necessitated the law, or why the Poll Tax Ordinance of 1852? What brought it? So we want to look at some of the causes, the reason or the rationale behind the Poll Tax Ordinance of 1852. So quickly, let us look at some of the causes of the Poll Tax Ordinance of 1852. Now, the first one that I want to talk about quickly is that the British government needed the money to establish local government in the Gold Coast colony. To establish local government in the Gold Coast economy. And now you see that in Ghana we have the central government, then we have the ministers, then we have the regional ministers, then we have the DCs, that is the metropolitan, municipal, and then the district chief executives. Then we have the assembly members, that are the people in our local areas, as well as the unit committees and the unit committee chairman. That is how they are able to bring rules, development into the people. And to be able to channel your policies from the top to the down, you need money, because the people that are going to be involved from the top hierarchy even to the local level, so that you'll be able to bring your policies and your development to them, you need these human resources, and to be able to get them, you need that. And so that is the first decision that they take, that they need to establish local government in the Gold Coast colony at that time. And to do that, you need revenue. The point two is that the British government needed money to pay the increasing number of British officials who were working for the government. I have retreated earlier that the British government at that time was ruling this nation from the central point. And because he wanted to bring the ruling to the local level and involve a lot of people, he needed to pay them. And so there was an increased number of people that was involved, and then they needed to be paid. And so he needed more money at that time. The point three was that the British government, as it were, needed more money to provide schools, roads in the country. This is no different from what we experience today. Today we have taxes that are being imposed, whether direct or indirect, by the government. And then these taxes are raised to mobilize some money to undertake developmental projects such as construction of roads, bridges, constructions of building of schools, and then the provisions of social amenities such as provision of electricity and the rest. This entails money. Now, because the British government does not only want to rule, but also to provide some basic amenities such as construction of schools and so on and so forth, and to also construct good roads, they needed money. And they thought that the payment of 1 shilling by every individual in the country per year was enough to mobilize such revenue to undertake such, as it were, project. Then the point four is that the British government in the Gold Coast at that time needed to introduce the Poll Tax Ordinance because they were no longer under the governor in Sierra Leone. So they needed to pay their workers. You must understand that Sierra Leone was also under the British colony. And at that time, Sierra Leone was providing most of the revenues that were being used in the management of Ghana's colonial economy at that time. And so when the governor of Sierra Leone had decided that internally the British government needs to raise her own revenue or her own money to manage her own affairs at that time, then there was the need to take that move of bringing the law of the poll tax ordinance, so that the revenue that is coming from Sierra Leone that has been cut short can be replaced with the poll tax ordinance of 1852. So basically, these are the reasons that they needed to undertake in order to mobilize money. So the long and short was that they needed money to pay workers, they needed money to undertake infrastructure development, they needed money because the capital inflow that was coming from Sierra Leone at that time had been seized, and so there was the need for the British government to internally mobilize some revenue at that time. So now, when these courses had come, what was the effect of poll tax ordinance? What was the effect? When we talk about the effect, when it was introduced, what was the results? What was the aftermath of the introduction of the poll tax ordinance? Number one, the poll tax ordinance saw some level of resistance. It saw some level of resistance. We have seen situations where, for example, if you remember, when the government of Ghana, His Excellency the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, wanted to bring a law where the MMDCE should be voted for and was seeking a referendum, there was a lot of opinion leaders, there was a lot of organizations that had spoken against that, and for that reason you remember that the government had to withdraw the referendum and push it into a future date. And so similarly, the Fanti Confederation was formed by the people, and the Fanti Confederation was formed with the sole aim to avoid the payment of these taxes that was introduced by the British government. Now you must understand that when new laws are being brought and the people see that they are not in line with the needs of the people, they are going to fight against it. And so one of the forces that raised against the poll tax ordinance of 1852 was the formation of the Fanti Confederation that was made. Number two, the people refused to pay the poll tax. This was because they thought that the introduction of the tax was forced on them. Do not forget, I have said that the poll tax ordinance of 1852 was a compulsory law which was made to force every Ghanaian citizen to pay 1 shilling per year. You see, you have to let people understand the rationale or the motive behind any activities that you want to undertake if you want a full support from them. But if you just want to force people, they will have to react. And so the people, after seeing that they just wanted to be shortchanged by the British government, blindly refused to pay the poll tax ordinance of 1852. That was also another effect. The third one was that the British government, the British government has mobilized around 7,500 pounds. The British government at that time mobilized 7,500 pounds from the tax. The money was used to provide amenities for the people. And so you see that though it was not that bad, you see, when you talk about the effect, we're talking about two: positive effects and negative effect. You must understand that one of the causes, as I have outlined earlier on, of the introduction of the poll tax ordinance was that the British government needed money to construct schools and roads. And so when he has mobilized that amount of money, he decided to provide some of these amenities. Then the fourth point is that the refusal of the people to pay the tax led to some disturbances in the Gold Coast colony. Don't forget that I told you that disturbances are simply rout or demonstrations that are expected or that are undertaken by the people in rebellion to any policy or effect that is being introduced by the British government at that time. And so these are some of the effects of the Poor Tax Ordinance of the 1852. And so we are looking at that. And so we are looking at the next one. Now, all the things that I have said today was that there was a moment in Ghana's history where the British government had taken control over the administration of this country. The British government needed money to run this economy, or the Gold Coast economy at that time. There was the need to introduce tax, but they realized that the taxes needed to have a backing of the law, and so they passed a law in 1852 called the Poor Tax Ordinance. And this tax was to force the people to pay 1 shilling per year. The reason was to establish a local economy. The reason was that they needed to undertake some developmental projects. The reason was that they needed money to pay their workers. The reason was that they needed to, as it were, because there was a short of revenue coming from Sierra Leone. And so they introduced that. And then when they had mobilized the money after the Poor Tax Ordinance of 1852, they had started taking some social amenities such as construction of roads and the building of schools. However, the challenge was that because it was forced on the people, they had refused to pay these taxes. And then to make matters worse, there was some formation of Fanti Confederation that was a resistance to the Ordinance of 1852. And then the 1852 Poor Tax Ordinance failed woefully because the people saw that it was imposed on them. They never appreciated it, and then they never paid. And so the Poor Tax of 1852 never saw the light of day. So around 1861, if my history is true, around 1861, then the Poor Tax Ordinance failed. Around 1861, the Poor Tax Ordinance failed, and I thank the technician for projecting it for me, and I see that my date is correct. It means that my history is still intact. And so by 1861, it has failed. So finally, let us look at some of the reasons why it failed in 1861. The first one was that the people of Gold Coast colony were not informed about the tax before it was introduced. I have told you this before, and I'm going to retreat it. I told you that if you bring a policy and you don't make people to be aware and educate the people on the need, then there's every reason why they are going to kick against it. And the Poor Tax Ordinance of 1852 was no different, and it suffered the same fate. And then the second point is that the people who were charged to collect the tax were selected by the British, and that the people had wanted their chiefs to select the collectors. You must understand that the money was being taken from the local people, and so because the British people were taking the money, the people saw that it is not fair, and that the people just wanted to reap what they did not sow, and that they felt that if their chiefs had selected them, they could make account of the money they are collected, and that they can be held accountable to all the money they are collecting and the projects that they are making. And because it did not happen that way, they did not see the reason why they did not see it. Then the third one was that the payment of the tax put additional burden on the people, and therefore decided not to pay. You must understand that already you must understand that already the people were not getting enough revenue. They were mostly seasonal farmers at that time. You know that in Ghana, majority of our people are in the primary industry, and so they don't get enough money. And so if we're going to introduce another tax, it is going to be a huge burden upon them. And when the burden became unbearable, they decided not to pay. Then the fourth point was that the people saw that the money collected were used to pay the British workers instead of building schools and repairing the castles as promised. You must understand that before the introduction of the Poll Tax Ordinance, they had not only talked about construction of schools and the building of hospitals and the rest. They had underlined major projects that they had convinced the local people that they were going to undertake. And so when they have paid this amount of money, they saw that chunk of the money they have collected from the local people are being used to pay the workers who are collecting the Poll Tax Ordinance. And don't forget that almost all those who were collecting the taxes were the British government officials. And so it's like they were collecting the money from the local people and they were sharing it among themselves to live a luxury life, like Rafik Mumuni, who is our IT teacher, who is living a big life because he's been paid very huge sums of money. Don't forget, he's a technician, an IT man, and they are ruling the world. And not like me, a social studies teacher. We only talk about history. We don't have money. And so if you collect money from me and you add it to Sarah Rafik's own, it's going to be a trouble. And so I'm going to naturally resist it. And that is exactly what happened at that time in around 1861. And so most of the promises that they made, they refused to honor them, but instead they were sharing the money as a remuneration to themselves. The last one that I want to end with for the sake of time was that some chiefs also decided not to allow their people to pay. Do not forget that they have sidelined the chiefs. The British government, in the introduction of the poll tax, had sidelined or put aside the chiefs that were the traditional rulers at that time, and they were collecting the money without consultation with the local people. And so the chiefs took exception to the stance of the British government and had ordered their people not to pay. And this was because they felt that the British refused to help them in the war against the Ashantis. Do not forget, we are talking about the Poll Tax Ordinance of 1852. And this was introduced mostly in the central part of the country, especially the coastal areas. And that is why we're talking about the Fanti Confederation. The Fanti Confederation are basically the people from the Fanti land that has saw the need not to pay, because at that time there was a war between the people along the coastal lands of Ghana, precisely the central region, and the people in the southern part. And when that war was raised, they had refused to, as it were, help them in the fight against the Ashantis, and therefore their refusal to pay. And so all these factors, coupled with others that time will not permit me to mention, propelled the collapse of the Poll Tax Ordinance of 1852. And so I know that even if you have forgotten, now you know the Poll Tax Ordinance, the causes, its effect, and how it collapsed in 1861. I hope I have satisfied my promise. Send comments, like the video, share, and subscribe to AGPS TV so that my future tutorials, you may be notified to watch it. Once again, I will honor my promise with other political events that took place in Ghana. Those of you who are interested in writing exams, the last time I've said that I have seen questions where students are asked to write and describe some political event that has taken place. And so you can talk about the bond of 1844, the 1948 route, and the poll tax ordinance of 1852. And so if you don't know anything, at least it is my belief that I've been at your service. Once again, my name is Mr. Samson Anane. I hope I've been grateful to you. Stay blessed and stay tuned to AGPS TV. Bye-bye.
Abundant Grace International School, we are located right in Obwa State, precisely BDM. The school has a number of facilities that aid in learning. We have qualified and trained teachers who are ready and willing to assist the children. The school has many facilities such as the ICT laboratory. We also have a science laboratory. We also have a library. The school has a number of buses which convey the children from their various destinations to the school premises. We have the football team, we have the drama group, we have a lot, and the school is based on the Christian principles. For more inquiries, you can call this number 0541 310 901 0541 670772. Abundant Grace, in God we trust.